All righty, so good evening, everyone. Um, 1 second. Great, we are there. All right, so good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? Good, good. How was your weekend? Weekend was good? Okay, good. Good. All right, so just a couple of housekeeping things, reminders. We use Canvas for this class heavily, yes. All of our communications, assignments, and things of that nature are going to be posted there and therefore communicated in that space. So by now you should have made yourself familiar with Canvas. So please be sure that you are checking a couple of different sections of Canvas to ensure that you're getting the right information that you need. One of those sections is the announcement section, as I have listed here. Every week by Monday, 12 noon, you will receive an announcement. Typically, I try to have them up on the Sunday so that you are able to know what's happening for the week, what is happening for the week, all right? And that's gonna be there. It's gonna also remind you of any assignments that you're gonna have. It's gonna tell you before we even discuss the material so that you can prepare yourself mentally that yes, I have an assignment due on that Saturday, yes. So you all need to start building in your time to be sure that you're completing that work and you're submitting it on time. Some assignments also require you to respond to another student. So if you all have done that, in particular, if you're a marketing assignment, remember, put something more than one sentence in that section, right? Discuss whether or not there was something similar, something different, something creative about that assignment in particular. So be sure you all have done that, yes? As you all know, we're already in the 4th week of classes, and next thing you know, midterm grades will be due. So please do your work, yes? You would hate for this to be a minor course or an elective or your fine arts sort of requirement and fail the course. All right, so be sure you are doing the work and you're submitting it on time, okay? All right, so by now, based on, and then I'll just hit with discussions in this manner. Now again, mine might look a little different than yours because I have up a ton of stuff here. But by now, you should have done these discussions, okay? By now, you should have done your introductory assignments, introducing yourself to the class, things of that nature. By now, you should have reviewed the syllabus and clicked on this syllabus and course expectation agreement. The sort of statement that you need to copy and paste is there. You should have populated that. You should have done and then put your name in addition to that. And by now, outside of Taylor, who just joined us literally Wednesday, you should have submitted 2 assignments. Hey, welcome. By now, you should have submitted both your marketing assignment and your front of house and box office assignment. We talked about the marketing assignment very briefly last week with some of the wonderful ideas and things that you all have. I think, I'm trying to remember I shared some of the ideas with Ms. Dee. One of the ideas we're going to see if we can still get approved because it's a little later. I forgot specifically who had the t-shirt idea. Yes, that's why you saw me looking at you. I was like, I don't want to say it's Skylar, but I kind of remember it was Skylar. Okay, for Deferred, because we talked about this still being the year of the 50th hip hop and us remounting the piece. So we talked about maybe a nice hashtag of Deferred remount 2023. So we'll have to figure out what that looks like it means. Some of you all had other fabulous ideas that we probably need to push more towards for Black Nativity and the dance, because we'll have more time to do those things. Right now for Deferred, they are in tech as we speak. That's how fast that came. They're in tech. So the goal would be to just push out and just get people familiar with what we're doing. I don't think many posts have gone out, if any at all, so far this semester. So for this to be our season opener and things of that nature, being able to just highlight what's happening in tech, those fun things we'll be able to do in that regard. And because it's in ETS, we can't really do like ticket giveaways and things of that nature. We're already down to like 40 seats because they're going to use quite a bit of those seats for projections and just other things with set. And then we're going to, I think, only put up like 30 online because you have to give room for the comp tickets for cast and crew. You have to give room for special guests, things of that nature. So it's going to sell as soon as the link goes up, like, period. So, so we won't spend too many efforts in that because it literally opens next week. We're going to be pushing more of those efforts towards Black Nativity and the dance showcase. So we're going to circle back to that in another conversation with what we decide to do as a team, how we decide to offer up that support, and those will serve as lab hours for you all. Yes.
Okay. So I just I was like, oh, you just probably dance showcase. She was like, but she didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah, so okay, good question. So let me just back up really quickly, just to bring up where we are. So we're opening up with Rhyme Deferred. Auditions have happened. I mentioned that we're in tech for that. One of our own classmates, Tyree Davis, is in the production, right? Our next one is Black Nativity, which will open up at the very first weekend of November. They're also in callbacks, literally, for that. So anyone who wanted to audition did audition, and they're in callbacks for that. So that cast list should be posted sometime this week. Okay, we have an alum from the music department, Greg Watkins, who's the musical director. Professor Eric Ruffin is directing. I think our own member of the Office of the Dean, April Carter, is serving as a stage manager. We have other folk who are, okay, so I just want to, then we go into the dance showcase. The dance showcase consists of student choreography. It typically is birthed out of a class. It's one of their composition courses. So it's usually either their junior year or maybe seniors. Sometimes it's been freshmen. It just depends on where they decide to place it. But that will happen mid-November, just before we go into Thanksgiving. So I don't know if the teachers have sort of gotten to that phase of why they're choreographed, like the fact that they'll have the opportunity to have an audience, because they should be getting close to auditioning internally for their pieces. So fingers crossed that it's still happening. I haven't heard that it's not happening, but anything can change that. Something else could trump that opportunity, or in some cases, work is not feasible to be done. They're not finished processing the choreography, so it's not ready to be displayed. And maybe needs to be displayed on a smaller scale, because maybe it's only 1 or 2 pieces versus 6 or 7 that are ready. Then it may not be in IRA, it may be in the dance studio. But also, we're going to be collaborating with them however that works, because those students are required in their class to do some of their marketing. So this won't be a takeover to be like, how can we help you and support you? Here's some ideas that we have. So that will start happening over the course of the week as well, when we bring people in to figure out what that looks like. And again, additional ways for you guys to gain lab hours. Yes and yes? Okay, good, good, good. So again, that's where we are thus far. Yes. Your next assignment, which is already posted here, is the production assignment. So before I hop into here, let me just say I have reviewed every assignment submitted except for one. Someone, I think, just submitted their check sheet or cheat sheet, so to speak, checklist for front of house and box office. So I have not been able to look at that. But anyone who submitted their stuff by Saturday, I have reviewed it. I have given you a thumbs up as like a, yes, I've seen it. Keen, I think I left you a message. Your Google link is not allowing me access. So just double check that so I can look at it. But that's why I always ask you all to do a PDF, because sometimes the Google links do what they want to do. And then anything could happen. If I'd have to go back and refer to it and it's gone, then so again, try your best to just take the time to PDF and upload. That will, eliminate these things like this, because it happens all the time. Somebody's like, what attachment? I'm like, oops, here you go. So it happens, right? All right, so that's that. Very, very good. Even though you're only required to respond to one student, take the time just to see what other people digest and or their presentation. Like, it was Taylor's first class. His checklist is like, wow, he took a lot of good notes. But Skylar, on the other hand, did shorthand notes, but presented it in a way on like a little notepad, like to do. So again, this wasn't about saying yours is, and everyone's going to have their own checklist, and you're going to be reminded of what to do by Ms. Fields, but it was just interesting how everybody took apart in a way their different things. Yeah. Okay. So just keep that in mind. You guys will be working together soon. Ms. Didi is supposed to be providing us links, not only for Rhyme Deferred for lab hours, but there's also a special opportunity. I can't really announce it yet until I think it's still somehow in the process of OGC, which is our Office of General Counsel, there's a really cool opportunity in which approved, you guys will also be able to serve for lab hours, okay? All right, so I'm just putting that out there. And there'll be a couple of other things that our fingers crossed will also be able to announce next week that take place in the first week of October. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, moving along into the production assignment. Earlier, I think it was our second class, we were talking about mission. And we went through Howard University's mission, we went through the department's mission, the college's mission vision, and then the department's vision. And then we tunneled down into our area of concentration, so to speak, in regards to the ideal student or what have you. But going back to the overarching umbrella of Howard, and then in particular the college, and even the department, we talk specifically about culture and this cultural aesthetic artist. And so I kind of went around and asked people, like, what do you think that means to a degree and what have you? And we talked about you all thinking about that, you all thinking about your own missions and different things of that nature. How are you all faring with that? Have you all had a chance to grapple with that and look back over that? Not really, kinda. Well, find the time to do that, right? Don't let it drop, because remember, we will pick back up with those different things, especially by the time you get to your final and presentation. So you want to have been able to put some forethought in that and it not be seemingly rushed. So for those of y'all that missed it, just go back into the module section and look at that Zoom recording where we discuss mission statements, okay? And then you'll see the links and things there as to what we were referring to, okay? So part of that cultural aesthetic activist, that's showing up a little bit in this assignment. So the assignment is to, because it's not due until Saturday, find a clip of a play or film, musical, music video. It could just be one performance. It could be the full version. It could be a snippet of it that highlights a culture or evokes cultural consciousness. Share your thoughts on the video that you found, that clip. Or it could even be an article. Let me just put it that way too, because sometimes it may be a conference event that you found. So I will allow for an article. And the reason for selecting it. Where would you produce that show and why? So if you found, I don't want to list any things, I want you to have your own ideas. But if you found a particular production that you feel the sort of foundation or root of that production speaks to either educating us on a particular culture or bringing forward culture consciousness, if you found that, where would you reproduce it? It could be on this campus, it could be anywhere, but you would determine where you would reproduce it and why you would reproduce it. Yes. No, I haven't. Meaning you would want to do it correctly, like you would want to, yes. So yes, so explain the lack, explain why, and then where. And then why would you want to put it there? If you wanted to bring it to campus, why is it on campus? You're taking it to New York, why is it in New York? If you're going to LA, why did you choose LA? Okay, so this is for several different reasons. One is about the culture and going back to your mission, your personal mission. Why are you attaching yourself to this? What bugs you? What's the problem? What's the solution? You are the solution. What are you trying to put to that, right? So that's part of it. But the other part of it is from the production standpoint on, I will be producing this, I'll be reproducing this here. Why? But why? What is it that you need to do to reproduce this? Yes? Then you can tell us the multiple places, or you can say, I would start here, but would consider the next 3 as touring dates. But you want to focus on the one location because you want to not put together like a mini proposal, but you really want to hone in on the reason that this was meaningful to you, one, And then why you want to reproduce it too, and then what you need to do to make that successful. So especially in your case, like, how would I change this negative narrative on this stereotype and help educate others about this particular culture and how diverse it is or wide it is? Does that make sense? Yeah, any questions? Questions? Thoughts? Okay, so ideally that's what it's about. However you start from here, like she said, something bugged her about it and she wants to fix it, right? For some of you also, I was really moved by this. So this is why I'm selecting this. Some of you are like, I don't even know where to start. Let me just start YouTube and then seeing what sparks my interest, seeing what hits me, right? So you all can do that. You can, look at Google Scholar, you can look at Google, YouTube, and just type in certain things and see what that, looks like and means to you, okay? Yes, yes, all right. It could also be dance, you know what I mean? I don't want you to think that it can't be something within the field of dance as well, okay? So if that is something that is of interest to you, maybe it's a particular style of African dance, maybe it's a particular style of jazz, maybe it's a particular style you feel that's not explored or celebrated enough at Howard, and that's why you want to bring it here. It could be a myriad of things. Yeah, maybe it's a particular type of genre, maybe it's two genres that are fused, and you want to talk about the correlation between that and why you would produce that concert here, or why you would remake a particular music video and make it live and what that means to a live audience. Maybe it's an orchestra, right? These are different things that you can sort of mull over as to what you glean from that, what gets you excited. Yeah, part of that is about the producing, the other part of it is about the production element of it, right? So what do you need to do? How do you need to be successful and all of that? Yes? Okay, any questions? Any questions? Okay, cool. All right, so that is your assignment. It is due Saturday, and I think it does ask you to respond to a student by next Wednesday's class or something to that effect. So we'll look at that. All right, very quickly, I just want to talk a little freely about production itself. Yes, all right, so with production, we talk about three main phases of production: pre-production, production, and post-production. All right. So just as those words mean themselves, these are the things that you have to do before the production starts, during the production phase, and after your production ends. Okay. And let me be clear, those assignments are vast depending on what it is you say you want to do within production. All right. Let me okay, so I want each of you all, I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds to think of a role or position. And then we're gonna go through just a couple of things that each of those roles would be required to do during pre-production and post, okay? So I'll give you about 30 seconds to think about it, and then we'll talk about it from that angle. That way it's something of interest to you, okay? Everybody think of at least something? Yes, we're good? Okay, we can do popcorn style, whoever wants to go first. Okay. A director, okay. All right, who else? Okay. All right, PA, okay. A writer, okay. We talk about playwright, or we talking about screen? Okay. All right. Screenwriter, yes. A producer, okay, same thing. Okay. First AC.
First and second.
First and second, yeah. All right. Okay, we'll go with this one as well. Yes, did I get you? Okay. Gaffer, okay, hold that, because that's a good one. Ooh, Jesus. Yes. Anything else? Key grip. Yes, listen, you all in the tech space. All right, so we're gonna hit a couple of them just because of time. But let's start with director because it's the first one on our list. Yes. All right. What is the primary responsibility of a director? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mhm.
Yes, they oversee some of the food division.
Mhm. 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 So some of that, hold that thought. Anybody else on director, roles of a director? Mhm. 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 Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So both of you all are right. You kind of hit it on different angles from what may be stage versus film. But the director's initial job is to provide that vision for the work. If it's been already done by the playwright, there's a body of work that exists, and they are to springboard from that body of work, right? So they already have sort of a framework, and they're to springboard from there. So in some cases, oversee the vision to a degree, but it's more so providing the vision, and they themselves operating in their own vision, so that everyone kind of gets what's happening and what's going on, right? So that's the overall responsibility of the director. As Solomon was saying, from the film side, they do work hand in hand with that cinematographer. Okay, because yes, they have directed that action, but ensuring that it is coming across the screen the way we experience it is another man. Okay, so they are also on the film side guiding those directors that are having to deal with those why is the word just slipping me? It'll come back to me. They're having to deal with not doubles, help me. It'll come to me. So I was just thinking about it when he was talking about working with the cinematographers, because it's not just the actors that the way it would be in film, I mean, the way it would be on stage, but they're having to deal with, all right, it'll come to me. Anyways, they're having to deal with their stand-ins, those who are their stunts, those stunts personnel. Thank you. They're going to have to deal with those folks as well and direct that. Because in some cases, those directors or those actors, excuse me, start off those scenes, and then that, the next person comes in to pick up exactly where it is. So it appears to be seamless. Sometimes the editing isn't as clean, and we're like, child, we know there's somebody different. But most times it looks really, really clean and really, really good. So they try their best to do things like that. Okay, so that's the role. What happens in pre-production? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we talked about them presenting their concept. Now they're in conversation with all of their heads of teams to ensure the concept is understood and can be executed. This is also where certain negotiations are happening. From the lane of, as a designer, they're coming in with their ideas as well. So they'll say to you, are we able to shift this here? What do you mean by muted colors? What do you mean by, because sometimes we use language and it's not always sort of conveyed easily or understood easily. So they will ask those questions to get further understanding of what it is that you're trying to have, especially those costume designers and prop designers. They get very specific. I want a bookcase. And you could go downstairs right now and ask Mr. Jackson. So I'm doing this play on a bookcase. He's going to ask you 15 questions before you leave him. Because, well, all the questions have to be asked. How many levels of the cases do you want? Is this wood? Is this metal? Is this steel? They're going to ask you all of those questions. Does the bookcase need to actually hold something? Is it big? Because that determines how heavy and secure they build the bookcase. Is this flat? Is this three-dimensional? Is this, they're going to ask you so many questions about the bookcase. Okay, so these are the things that happen during pre. During production, the director's focus is all about what we are supposed to be experiencing as the audience. Do they get pulled in other directions? Yes, but their focus needs to be about the product itself. They need to be not worried about, but making sure that their actors are safe, that they're understanding their different things, that the process is moving along, and they have help. We don't have some of these names up here. They have help from their stage managers, from the production managers, to ensure the integrity of the production is being maintained and the timeline is being maintained. But during production, their focus is literally the words from the page, bringing life, the words from the page. That should be their focus. Okay. Does it not mean that they can't meet with the marketing person and give their sort of vision for what they're expecting the flyer to look like, or what that photo shoot means, and specific scenes or moments that they want to capture? Yes, but they got to put the product up on its feet. That is their focus. Their focus is also to bring in additional resources that help the cast understand their vision as well. We talk about this particularly in theater from the dramaturgy and dramaturgy aspect. These are the additional resources that dramaturgy pulls together surrounding the entire production. So for instance, our opening season is round deferred. They have had to go through the history of what is round deferred, when did it start, who's involved, what was the script, what are the various iterations of this script, when was the last time it was mounted, where was it mounted, what is the play about, what's the timeline of the play, what's the location of the play, what was happening during that time in the world. Right? So they decided to bring that production to current day, but if they kept it in 2000, what was happening in 2000? And that dramaturgy would talk about what's happening in 2000, from who was elected for president to our favorite artist, to maybe, because it's hip hop, maybe they'll bring in who maybe have won certain awards during that time. All of that to get the actors into the world of the script that they're in. Because now you're inviting everyone on stage and even your team off stage into this new world, not the one they're experiencing every day, but this one right here that's coming from these pages. That's what the production is about. And that's the director's job during production. Yes. Now, post-production is a little funny for the director, because typically once the show opens, they lift their hands off of it. It begins to live and breathe. And again, we didn't put this person here, but it's now in the hands of the stage manager. This is why many stage managers become directors, because they're not only in the room taking these notes and watching that director direct, but it's their responsibility to maintain the integrity of the direction that the director gave. So oftentimes, as a cast member, you will receive, especially when the show is running, you will receive an email about maybe a line you missed, or maybe you put the line out of order, which could be a big deal depending on the line. Sometimes things can, but sometimes that and isn't just a conjunction that one can go in front of the other. Maybe it's important that this one is selected second. One, because you want to maintain the integrity of the playwright or screenwriter who did it. That's number one. But two, because sometimes that order or that is a cue line for the next person. So then Taylor says a line, but he keeps saying it wrong. And so Skylar's like, I keep missing it because I thought it's supposed to be this. So then we stop, we pause, we correct it. We offer what that line is, da, 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 da. That happens during that moment when the director is gone. So what I'm trying to say to you all is the director's post starts during the run for actors. So it's the director's post, but it's not the production's post. Does that make sense? By the time the production is really in post, the director is into tech for another show. Typically, directors open up on a Friday or they in rehearsal somewhere else on Tuesday. They keep their money moving. And that's how the director keeps moving. Their hands are lifted off of it. So their post is, sometimes it's still interviews, especially for film, because the post is post-production, is editing. They're in that room, they're making sure, as Solomon just told you, their vision is being met. I don't know if it's that color. When we talk about it being muted, why are we going black and white here? That's not, they're going to say that. It's like, well, no, you're looking at it from a different spin. Why don't you come into the studio so you can see what we see? So all those conversations can happen, right? So that's different on the film side because they're dealing with editing. And then if it's post, meaning the release has happened, they're in interviews. They're talking about their process. They're talking about the next biggest thing. They're talking about whether or not they're getting awarded. So it can be different for different people in different phases. Yes? We kind of get that about the director. And there's way more that they do because they're in rehearsal for 6 weeks, sometimes longer, depending on the production of show. Sometimes they're on a couple of weeks prior to that, getting their vision together. Sometimes they're relocating. They're relocating for these projects. They're getting visas, they're getting clearances if they're going international, or in some cases coming to the US for the first time, or not having been here in a long time. So all of that is part of the pre-production that administrators have to do. Where are we housing this person? How are they getting off the flight? Where, what's transportation looking like? Those different things can happen. Yes? Are we good with director? Just kind of generally. All right. PA, production assistants. Lord, listen about these PA. I'm telling you, you cannot do nothing without a production assistant. I'm telling you, you need them. They are like volunteers to your nonprofit. Production assistants, unfortunately, do not really get paid as much as they really should, but they are your glue. They know a little bit about everything to get you through, okay? Production assistants also can fill in. They can fill in administratively from scripts, hole punching, the basic things, all the way up to having to fill in for the stage manager, all the way to having to help with tech or something. Again, their responsibility can be broad. They may be responsible for company management and hospitality needs if there isn't a company manager on deck. And then that general manager or managing director may be handling payroll or things of that nature. But that PA may be serving as a company manager to make sure that your cast is good, hospitality is happening, things of that nature. Okay, they may even be over a smaller crew or reporting to that SM directly about certain things happening in the rehearsal space and room. Maybe we've had PAs stand in. Someone has been ill, that swing wasn't there, the PA stood in red lines. The PA, they could be helpful in that manner. For pre-production, if you're hiring a PA, they're coming on a little bit, let me not say, not always. Depending on the organization, you may bring them on pretty early so they can start getting the legwork running for different things. Maybe they're helping with casting. We talked about casting and pre for directors. Sometimes you don't always have everybody in place. You may have a stage manager and a PA. And that person is helping to gather pictures, headshots, resumes, audition forms, all of that during pre-production, during casting phase. They may be setting up the rehearsal room before the stage manager and director walk into the space, or producers walk into the space. They could be doing that. They could be scheduling interviews. Sometimes people are not initially auditioning for a role. They're being asked if they would like to audition. And that audition is a formality. The casting director and the director already knows who they want. Right? So those different things are happening. Sometimes production assistants are by the time we get into production, are in the room. Something helping with costuming. Sometimes your production assistant is the one taking your measurements for your costume designer because maybe they don't have a full team to do that. Not always does everyone have the luxury of the Kennedy Center to have a stitcher and an alternate. No, child, it's like one person. We like that now. We have Miss Frankie Bethay, who is downstairs, who is holding it down for costumes, even though her major niche is makeup. But she stepped up and said, I will do what I can. And that's what we are. And sometimes that happens. PAs have that wide breadth and do those things of that nature. For the film world, they could be asked to do anything from grabbing you a cup of coffee, to picking up an artist from the airport, to helping to make scene changes. Okay, if you're dealing with film, and in particular, if you're in a space where you're dealing with a ton of projections, and I need what's happening on my back wall to match my actual 3D model, I need to match that rug up, I need to match that platform up. So when that camera zooms in and out, you can't tell whether or not this is a projection screen or 3D. A lot of these commercials you see, child, ain't no real couch back there. You try to sit down if you want to, you're going through a television screen. It is projection. Okay, that's the magic of theater, the magic of film and entertainment. Not everything is truly a full-fledged house, or part of it is, but they, this is the kitchen and they just switch out. This becomes the living room, different panels create different things. Like, we can film a whole movie right here as long as we don't have to be outside necessarily. Seriously, with the right projection wall, the right panels, and different sort of 3D things, we can do that right here. You have a whole kitchen backdrop and a kitchen island, and you would think I'm in a kitchen. Okay, so these are the things that they do to save on money, to save on cost, but those things take time, and so those PAs may be asked to help and assist in that. Okay, something could happen that the PA has to go off-site for, where your designers and everything can't. Your makeup artist may say, oh, I ran out of this foundation, I ran out of it. That PA is being sent with the company card to go pick up whatever and come back. That's how that works. Post-production, they're helping to close out. By now, you done already had your opening, you done had your closing. When I say opening and closing, sometimes people celebrate those. Sometimes the company will offer cupcakes and fruit and pictures and all that stuff. But by the time we get through all of that closing, they're making sure people have turned their books back in time. They're making sure their costumes have been returned, especially when you get on expensive sets. You're not supposed to keep that necklace, girl. Bring that back. You're not supposed to keep them shoes, sir. Bring that back. So they're responsible for those different things. Okay. Some artists have been gifted things because of the performances and productions that they've been in, but typically those houses are keeping those items. They are very expensive items to create. And when they have to remount them, oftentimes, if you are auditioning, it's not that you weren't good, it's that you may not be able to fit into the costume. That costume may be too big and they're not planning to bring it in. They're not redoing that dress. They're not redoing, they're not resizing every single pants, hem, and inseam on this suit. They're like, no, we got to find somebody 6'2", because that's what it is. So sometimes those things happen, but those PAs are keeping up with all of those things in the post of it all. Yes and yes? All right, we're going to hop into writers, screenplay. The process is going to be different because it depends on how you're starting. Are you starting for the love of this and you're trying to pitch this, or has someone come to you to write this? That's something different. That's something different when someone says, I have X amount of dollars and we're looking for you to write X, Y, and Z. We're looking for you, like I assume a network going to like a Shonda Rhimes. They're coming to her and pitching to her. We want you to establish this, right? So she's coming up with then a concept in the framework of what they have. Now, because of who she is now, she can probably shift their gears a little bit and say, well, so this is, I guess we'll go with it. Right? If you're first starting out, you're going to kind of stay within the lines and then you'll color out as you go. Right? But if you are starting from scratch, similar to how the young students like Camilla Forbes and them did, they were responding to a challenge. They were responding to a challenge on this institution with feeling like hip hop was not legitimate theater. And it couldn't be celebrated. So they were coming from a historical research and both experiential standpoint of saying, but it can be. And let us show you how, by putting it into the format that you will accept it in. So here's this hip hop theater. That's what you go to that's what you go to the theater for. You go to the theater to be entertained, you go to be educated, you go to be healed. So let us show you how hip hop can do that same thing. So that's what those students did in 1997, and took 2 years to workshop it and perform it in 1999 downstairs in ETS, before it was officially the Al Freeman Jr. Environmental Theater Space. It was just the theater space, environmental theater space. That's what they did. So their process was different. Their process was different in their research and their deities that they were looking at, and the combating against what hip hop means, then how it continues to evolve. You can go home and ask your mother, your grandmother, and maybe a cousin, and 3 different generations will tell you 3 different things about their experience or sort of positioning about hip hop. Be different. It'll be different. Yeah. So in pre, it depends on how you're approached. It depends on what you're trying to pitch and things of that nature. Let's say we've gotten into what is written and now we're in production mode. For the screenwriter, they could be asked to shift things or change things depending on how things are going. If it's seemingly not shifting in a different way, or based on a cast member, something has happened. Writing will shift the change to shift. A lot of during the COVID, some of your favorite characters were written off because of budget things. Some of your favorite characters were written off because they refused to get a COVID vaccine. So those different things had to happen right there during production. Okay. The playwright's job usually is a little bit more laid back. Usually. By this time, their stuff is in publishing. That publishing company is getting the rights to those colleges, to those institutions, organizations that want to do their work, and they get to collect the check. But sometimes when you're still workshopping it and you're in production, you are on site. You too are editing in the space, because now beyond the workshop that you may have had of a stage reading, now you're seeing it really on its feet, and you're like, you know what, that don't really work. Let me change that. Let me edit that. And that is happening. I've been on a production with that, was the playwright was in the space, and it was like, okay, we need a new page, we need a new page 30 sections. Like, that's what it was. It was happening right there in real time. So it can, or if you're a little bit more established with your work, you may be invited to speak. You may be invited to speak similar to a dramaturge and tell us, what did you mean by this? How was this process for you? Help us get into the world more in the world of this play. That can happen during. Post for the playwright, they've already seen it, maybe they're being interviewed. It depends on what's happening. Like, for instance, with us remounting it here, I could see Camilla Forbes having interviews about this because it's the 50th hip hop, it's being redone back on Howard's campus. I could see her in interview mode. Another playwright, maybe not so. Maybe not so. Produced itself long enough, right? And you all know some of this in the film. Some people don't even know who wrote it specifically. Unless you looked at the credits long enough, you're not sure of the true writing team. You're giving credits to the people you saw on screen. You don't only sit through the full credit list to see all the crew members that it took. He's talking about all that stuff. Who held your boom mic? Yeah, who did that? Right? So who was on camera 1 or camera 2, your first assistant, your second assistant, their roles and responsibilities, maybe they're over certain scenes of that particular film. Okay, similar to an assistant director in a production, you may have 2 or 3 scenes in a play that only those characters are in. That director will hand it off to that assistant director. Can you work with them? Can you tighten this up? Can you clean this up? That's their job. Okay, those things are different. And let me be clear, when we go further down into this list about all the way down to the minutia of it all, as they say, when you're in a union house, there are certain members of your crew that can only do what they do. So kind of like how we're downstairs, we may move a chair. Don't you touch that chair. Don't you move that table. Not in that union house. And you don't think nothing of it. You just, oh, sorry. That's someone else's job specifically. You are not to do it. Even as an actor, someone could have missed the mark of center. What I mean by center is putting that X sort of downstage center so that we kind of know a basic, this is center. And you go, let me just move it. You don't think nothing of it. But that's how serious it is depending on the work you're doing and what's happening. That is specific to that person. It's also about the accountability that when something happens in shift, I know who did it because it was specifically their job to do. Okay. So in some of these positions, they don't have a ton to do in pre, except for get familiar with the work that they're working on, because their job doesn't start really until production. And some of them in post, they also don't have much to do because their job is done. I'm not doing much but the boom mic, but putting it up, coiling it, cleaning it, right? Putting it back, or returning it, it's been rented, right? Maybe there's some extra lighting and things that are happening. I'm here and I'm adjusting. Okay, well, we're done with that portion. So now it's about just cleaning and restoring the space in which we filmed in. Making sure any rentals get returned, those different things. Get those deposits back for renting, maintain your good relationships and discounts that you're getting. That happens there. Okay, but other folks like a producer, like that production manager, that stage manager, that pre, during, and post blends, so it's like overlap. Especially for a production manager, because unlike the stage manager who's typically working on the one show because they're in rehearsal, 11 to 5 or 6 to 10 or whatever it may be, that production manager is already into the next thing. Okay, like Emil Shackelford is our stage manager for the first opening production. That's his focus. Round Deferred, boom, that's his focus. Black Nativity, Miss April Carter, boom, that's her focus. Both of them, and the spring and the showcase that's coming up, but hasn't really happened yet. You have Miss Didi, the one that you all met very briefly during training, or either when you served, or maybe you were with Professor Hart, I think, mainly. But I introduced Miss Didi Fields as our production operations manager during our training last week. She's looking at all of it. The producing artistic director is looking at all of it at the same time. So they're in pre, during, and post, right? Like we're in production, we're in tech for Round Deferred, and we're in pre for Black Nativity, and we're in pre for the dance showcase. And that's what happens for various roles. Okay. Meanwhile, those stage managers at ASMs, they're kind of solid in their phase. Okay. You're kind of solid in their phase. All right. Now, some directors cross over too. Because again, as I mentioned to you all, by the time the director hits opening, they're moving on to another show. So they've been in pre while their first show was in tech. They've had to submit another designer's concept. They're working on making sure their lodging and all of that situated where they are, blah, 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 blah. So by the time they open, they get to leave, and now they're going into production. Yeah, the same thing may happen for designers. Designers often will overlap themselves as well. The actors, not so much. It's a lot on the body, especially depending on the show. They may take on something here, but they may not do 2 full-blown musicals at the same time. It's a lot on the voice, it's a lot on the body. So they may not do that. And will they host something really quick, do a quick commercial? Absolutely. Do an interview? Sure. But 2 full productions? Usually not. Okay. All right. Any questions? So I want you to think about that when you're going into your assignment about production and what you want to pull from it. When I'm asking you, what is it that you need to be successful in this? Right? Who's your team? Who's your initial team? Right? What's your initial vision for redoing this cultural conscious or lack thereof and wanting to re-educate, reintroduce the world to this, and why? Yeah? Any questions? Okay, cool beans. Cool beans. Well, that is it. And that's all, unless you have any questions. Everybody's good? All right, that's it. Thanks, party people.
Thank you.
Thank you.